That's why the NDP's campaign is going to be about character assassination. Their only hope is that they make conservatives in Alberta hate Smith so much they don't vote. And this is where Smith, either intentionally or unintentionally, has cultivated herself a bulletproof shield. She's had so many silly, small scandals, so many gaffes, so many awkward things, so many stupid things. Why would you even say that to anybody? There isn't going to be traction on any of them anymore. There's nothing the NDP can really throw in a campaign now that is going to demoralize UCP voters. All that is left is that Smith and the UCP can encourage UCP voters by giving them red meat. You can't demoralize someone more than they've been demoralized. But you can remoralize somebody. You can rally them. But it's hard to make them more melancholic than they already are when they're melancholic. To give an example of this, there's a very recent, really dumb scandal that has popped up. It's the biggest nothing burger probably this year in Canadian politics. And that is, Danielle Smith had a call with Arthur Pawlowski, which he recorded and then posted on social media, where she was promising him that she would look into his case, the COVID charges being pressed against him, and that she would try to help him. Following this, Smith talked to the Crown Prosecutor, talked to the Minister of Justice, and looked for solutions. Not just to Arthur Pawlowski, but to all of the people who've been charged with COVID regulatory violations. Following this, she was told by the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General, which I think are the same person, that she can't do anything. This is in the hands of the Crown, and it's the Crown's decision what to do, and that she, as the the Premier, has no capacity to change this. She cannot pardon them, if you will. Now, in principle, she could have passed a law retroactively, though it's still debatable whether that law would compel the Crown to prosecute underneath it. And it gets kind of fuzzy, but in principle, she had the power to do that, though she has not chosen to do this. And what the NDP, CBC, and generally the left wing in general in Canada, on election Twitter, for example, has been saying is, oh, this is the SNC-Lavalin scandal again. Danielle Smith did an SNC-Lavalin, and then she's toast, she's finished, it's the end. The end is nigh. It's not, though. This is nothing like SNC-Lavalin. It's superficially similar if you don't understand why SNC-Lavalin was a problem. But if you look in for 1 nanosecond about why SNC-Lavalin was an issue, why anyone cared about SNC-Lavalin, you realize it's not the same at all. So what happened in SNC-Lavalin? Since apparently lots of people have missed what the scandal was. So in SNC-Lavalin, there was a company, SNC Lavalin, who is being charged with corruption that they did prior to 2015. My understanding is they were bribing the Libyan government for projects. I could be slightly mistaken there, but the general gist is they were caught bribing government officials overseas. That is illegal in Canada. So they were being prosecuted. Come 2018, when the prosecution really starts, because they committed the crime pre-2015, I want to say it was 2014, but they really only got caught in the 2017-ish range, and they started getting prosecuted in 2018. So Trudeau passed in an omnibus budget a law to change prosecution guidelines to allow prosecutors to do a deferred prosecution agreement with someone who's committed select crimes. In essence, this is a reduced sentence. It's less serious. Because if you are caught with corruption, you are banned from, or under the current previous laws, if you're convicted for corruption, you are banned from government contracts and stuff like this. This would allow SNC Lavalin to still do government contracting in Canada, among other places. Now, passing this law in and of itself is fine. It'd be the same thing if Smith passed a law to allow people who were charged with COVID regulatory violations to get reduced sentences or reduced charges. It's the same deal. Where this became an issue is he passed this law, and his Attorney General / Justice Minister, who is the same for sure federally, did not want to change prosecution. Wilson-Raybould wanted to keep charging SNC Lavalin as a corruption case, and seek conviction underneath that, and not get a deferred prosecution agreement. Trudeau did not like this, because he passed the law specifically for SNC Lavalin. So he put a lot of pressure on Wilson-Raybould to try to change this, and when she resisted, she was demoted. Then this came out that she was being heavily pressured and then demoted when she refused, and then she quit publicly, and this became a big stink. Now, this seems very similar, I know what you're all thinking right now. It's like, how is this different? The key difference here is Smith, as the premier, is entitled to ask questions. Same with Trudeau. If Trudeau went to Wilson-Raybould and asked her, why are you not taking a deferred prosecution agreement? I think you should for XYZ reasons. That's fine. He didn't do anything wrong. That's what Smith did. What made Trudeau's case wrong on the first level is he didn't take Wilson-Raybould's response, that is, no, and he fired her and replaced her with someone who would do what he wanted. That's step one. Step two, because even that could have been permissible in certain circumstances. If, let's say hypothetically, we had a law on the books, and this law was, if you help a grandma cross the street, you get the death penalty. Like, wildly ridiculous, wildly over-exaggerated, wildly punitive, wildly capricious. Like, why are we punishing people for helping grandmas cross the street? That's ridiculous. If you had a law like that, and someone was being charged under it, and you as the prime minister were like, we shouldn't be executing people for helping grandmas cross the street, that's insane, and you try to get your justice minister to do something different, you've passed a new prosecution guidelines so that this isn't the main law anymore, that there's alternatives. We can, instead of, you just get a slap on the wrist. Don't help grandmas cross the street. This is not a great example, but you get the picture, right? It's completely capricious. It doesn't make any sense. Then in that case, firing the justice minister and getting a different one who will change the prosecution makes sense and is just and is good. That wouldn't be a bad thing. If SNC Lavalin committed corruption and the penalty for corruption was dismembering the company, it's dissolved, everyone loses their job, everyone in the entire company is sent to jail and is fined $10,000 or whatever. If it was something insane like that, he wouldn't have been in the wrong. Why he was in the wrong, though, was SNC Lavalin committed a serious crime that Canadians do not like, corruption, and Trudeau was trying to get someone who committed a serious crime that Canadians do not like and not charge them for it. Or at least charge them significantly less. In the case of Smith and Arthur Pawlowski and every other people charged with COVID regulatory violations, trying to seek different persecution for them is not just okay, it's not just acceptable, it's morally good. Because, in the case of Arthur Pawlowski, charging a pastor for having church service is insane. That is capricious, vindictive tyranny. It is completely and utterly unjust treatment. Political intervention to stop capricious, whimsical tyranny is morally good. That is a good thing to do. So not only did she not fire her justice minister for refusing her demands, and you can't even really call them the demands, she asked a question, and then when she was told it cannot be done, she stopped asking it. Not only did she do that, which is the correct thing to do, in normal career, in normal pathways, in non-emergency circumstances, that is the correct thing to do. Not only did she do that, but her request to begin with was morally good because she was trying to not get someone who did nothing wrong charged for a nothing. That is a morally good thing to do. That's why this scandal is a complete nothing. It's not a scandal. She did nothing wrong. The reason why you are seeing it pushed as a scandal is because the NDP needs it to be a scandal. They want it to be a scandal. They crave that it is a scandal. Because the only way the NDP wins is if the UCP voters think Smith is like Trudeau. Or, in other words, like a whimsical tyrant who doesn't know what she's doing, doesn't care what she's doing, she's just violating the law, she's inept, she's stupid, or whatever you want to call her. That's how the NDP wins, by demoralizing and depressing the UCP voters. So they will always be pushing character assassination like this, regardless of whether it's true or not, regardless of whether there's mitigating circumstances or not. However, that doesn't mean it matters. This whole affair literally doesn't matter. Not only to people like me who are explaining it and telling you why it's a nothing, but More pragmatically, voters never care about this stuff. We are in 2023. We are so far in the age of social media. We're so far into the age of silly scandals and dumb things caught on camera or caught on audio that are put on the internet, and everyone and their dog can hear it and replay it 9,000 times. We are so far into that. It doesn't matter. You just need to look at Trudeau. Trudeau has committed so many scandals. Actual corruption doesn't affect his voters. He lost some voters initially, and not even that many, I will add. Maybe like 500,000 in 2019. And since then, what has happened? Well, not much. And you could argue possibly a lot of the voters he lost might just be turnout. They just don't really care to vote anymore. And you could argue he should try to get them to vote, but he doesn't need them. So why would he bother? But it's not just Trudeau. You also have Doug Ford, who has the exact same thing. Do you remember back in the fall, the whole big stink about him trying to force back to work and using the notwithstanding clause? Look at his polling now. His polling's fine. He's polling just perfectly fine if he wants another majority. In fact, he's polling almost the same way he was polling in the last election. It's almost indistinguishable. There's no inkling that it hurt him. You go outside Canada, you look in the US. Who is the most popular Republican presidential candidate? It's Donald Trump. He's almost certainly going to win, barring DeSantis or someone else coming in and doing a very good campaign. The Republican primary, I will clarify. And who's committed more silly, dumb scandals than Trump? Almost nobody. And it doesn't affect him. It doesn't matter. Voters don't care. The age of scandal is gone. It doesn't matter. That's the thing you really need to understand about the internet and social media. Scandals don't matter. What matters is the voters you are trying to court to vote for you perceive that you will do things for them. You could be a horrible, terrible human being. You're corrupt. You don't care. You're autocratic. You're totalitarian. Whatever. You could be a terrible person. But as long as the age of the internet, you are giving voters what they want, it really doesn't seem to matter. All that matters is you identify your voter and you give them things that the other person can't give them, that they want. And again, this is why this is a nothing. It's a nothing. It's a nothing. The odds that this actually impacts Smith in any meaningful fashion after the last 6 months is inane. You don't know what you're talking about if you're saying that. And there's really no data to this. The only poll we've had since this started coming out, a Ledger poll over poll, she's up a point. Not a lot. But if she was flat, it would be the fact that she's up at all tells you it doesn't matter. Because if it mattered even slightly, she would at least be flat. Because keep in mind, her vote trajectory in aggregate, not necessarily every poll over poll, but if you look at the body of polls, she's trending upwards, Smith. So, if this affected her at all, you would expect flattening. But no. The most recent Ledger poll, she's still gaining. So it doesn't matter. Of course it didn't matter. Why would it?